On a lavish private island retreat, Mark and his wife Lucy's seemingly perfect life begins to unravel. When Mark discovers that Lucy has been drawn into the orbit of their enigmatic billionaire host, William, his world is shattered. Betrayed and furious, Mark sets out to expose the truth, igniting a tense showdown that shocks their friends and colleagues. But as secrets unravel and confrontations escalate, the weight of choices made and paths untaken leads to a devastating conclusion that none of them could have foreseen. A gripping tale of love, betrayal, and the high cost of revenge, The Island Weekend explores the fragility of trust and the unexpected consequences of human frailty. The island retreat was supposed to be a celebration, a culmination of years of hard work. My wife Lucy and I had both built stable careers at the same marketing firm, she as a customer ambassador, and me as the IT team lead. We had a good life together, a modest but comfortable house, 2 wonderful kids, and a rhythm of existence that, while not thrilling, was undeniably fulfilling. When the invitation arrived, I didn't think much of it. The CEO, Jack Edwards, announced a weekend trip to a private island owned by one of our wealthiest clients, William Fellows. It was meant to be a mix of relaxation and business, a way to strengthen the bond with a man who could easily become our firm's biggest client. Lucy was ecstatic. Her excitement was infectious at first, but the way she gushed about William began to gnaw at me. "He's so accomplished," she said one evening, her eyes alight with admiration. "Inherited the family fortune, manages it all like a pro. You can just feel his presence when he walks into a room." It felt harmless at the time, like someone admiring a celebrity. But the more she talked about him, the more unsettled I became. Still, I shrugged it off. Lucy was naturally enthusiastic, and I trusted her. When we boarded the private jet on that crisp Friday morning, the sense of luxury was overwhelming. The leather seats, champagne on ice, and impeccable service were the kind of things I'd only seen in movies. William himself greeted us as we arrived on the island, an easy smile on his face and an undeniable charm in his demeanor. He was every bit the man Lucy had described, tall, handsome, and exuding a quiet authority. The island was a paradise. White sandy beaches hugged turquoise waters, and the lush greenery framed a collection of elegant villas where we'd be staying. Lucy was buzzing with excitement, snapping pictures and chatting animatedly with the other guests, most of whom were colleagues or their spouses. I tried to focus on the positive. It wasn't every day that we got an all-expenses-paid trip to a place like this. The first day passed like a dream. There were snorkeling excursions, a lavish lunch on the veranda, and a sunset dinner that rivaled anything I'd ever experienced. Lucy seemed to thrive in this environment, her energy infectious as she mingled effortlessly with the group. I, on the other hand, was content to stay in the background, nursing a drink and observing. It was during that dinner that I first noticed the way William looked at her. It wasn't overt, just lingering glances and the occasional smile that seemed a little too personal. Lucy, for her part, seemed flattered. I tried to tell myself I was imagining things, but a seed of doubt had been planted. That night, as we lay in bed, I couldn't shake the unease. Lucy was in high spirits, recounting the day's events with a giddy energy I hadn't seen in years. She curled up beside me, her warmth and enthusiasm momentarily easing my doubts. We made love with an intensity that felt like a rediscovery, and for a while, everything seemed perfect. The next day was more of the same, activities, laughter, and the ever-present shadow of William. By the time dinner rolled around, I felt like I was going crazy. Was I reading too much into their interactions? Or was there something there, something unspoken but undeniable? That night, everything came crashing down. William approached me after dinner, pulling me aside with an easy, confident grin. "I'd like to have a word, Mark," he said, his voice smooth and unhurried. I followed him to his private study, a room that oozed opulence with its mahogany furniture and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the moonlit ocean. He gestured for me to sit, pouring us both a glass of expensive scotch before taking a seat opposite me. "I'll get straight to the point," he said, leaning back in his chair. "I've had the pleasure of working with Lucy over the past few months, and I've come to admire her greatly. She's an incredible woman." I nodded cautiously, unsure of where this was going. "That's why I'm proposing a temporary arrangement," he continued, his tone so casual it took me a moment to process his words. "I'd like to spend the rest of the weekend with her. In return, I'll transfer $100,000 into your joint account." I stared at him, stunned into silence. Surely, I'd misheard him. But the look on his face told me he was serious. "What the hell are you talking about?" I managed to choke out. "It's a straightforward offer," he said, unfazed by my reaction. "I think we both know how much Lucy means to you. And I think we both know she's curious about other possibilities." Anger surged through me, hot and overwhelming. "You're out of your damn mind," I spat, standing up. "She's my wife. She's also her own person," William said, his calm demeanor never wavering. "And, for what it's worth, she's already agreed." The words hit me like a physical blow. I stumbled back, gripping the edge of the desk for support. "You're lying," I said, though my voice lacked conviction. "I think you should talk to her," he said, rising from his chair. "The offer stands until tomorrow morning." I stormed out of the room, my heart pounding in my chest. I wanted to confront Lucy right then and there, but something held me back. If what William said was true, I needed proof. The night stretched on in agonizing silence as I lay awake beside Lucy, my mind racing. The woman I'd loved and trusted for over a decade had betrayed me, or was about to. My world was crumbling, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. The next morning, I made a decision. If Lucy had chosen this path, then I needed to see it for myself. Only then could I decide what came next. The morning sun streamed through the curtains, bathing the villa in a golden glow. Lucy stirred beside me, oblivious to the storm raging inside my head. I watched her for a moment, her face serene and untroubled. It was a sight that used to bring me comfort, but now it only fueled my unease. I needed answers, but I couldn't confront her outright, not yet. If she denied everything, I wouldn't know where to go from there. Instead, I decided to observe and gather what I could. If William was lying, I'd have no problem forgiving myself for being overly cautious. If he wasn't, well, I'd cross that bridge when I came to it. Breakfast was served on the veranda, a spread so extravagant it could have fed a small village. Lucy was her usual vibrant self, chatting animatedly with the others about the activities planned for the day. I forced a smile, pretending to be interested, while my eyes darted between her and William. He was there, of course, his presence commanding as ever. The way he addressed Lucy, the subtle touches on her arm or shoulder, it was enough to set my teeth on edge. And yet, she didn't seem to mind. In fact, she seemed to thrive on it. My stomach churned. As the day progressed, I noticed more than I wanted to. William and Lucy weren't exactly hiding their connection, but they weren't flaunting it either. It was in the way their conversations lingered a beat too long, or the way their laughter seemed a touch too intimate. I couldn't help but wonder how I'd missed it before. That afternoon, during a snorkeling trip, I caught Lucy stealing glances at William. She tried to hide it, but I saw it for what it was, a longing that cut me deeper than I thought possible. It was as if I was watching someone I didn't know, a stranger who happened to wear my wife's face. When we returned to the villa, I knew I had to act. My opportunity came when Lucy stepped away to change for dinner. Her phone was on the nightstand, unlocked. My heart pounded as I picked it up, fingers trembling as I navigated to her messages. It didn't take long to find what I was looking for. There they were, texts between her and William, spanning weeks. Some were professional, discussing work and logistics. But others were far more personal. Flirtatious banter, compliments that went beyond the realm of colleagues, and plans for the weekend we were now in the middle of. The final nail in the coffin was a message from just 2 days ago. Looking forward to seeing you, Lucy. It's going to be a weekend to remember. She'd responded with a heart emoji. I sat on the edge of the bed, the phone heavy in my hand. My mind raced, swinging between anger, disbelief, and a hollow sense of resignation. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't paranoia. This was betrayal, laid bare in a series of pixels on a screen. Lucy returned moments later, her face lighting up when she saw me. "Hey, what are you doing in here?" she asked, pulling a dress from the closet. I shoved the phone back onto the nightstand and stood, brushing past her on my way to the bathroom. "Just needed a minute," I muttered. In the bathroom, I splashed cold water on my face, trying to collect myself. Confronting her now would be a mistake. There were too many people around, too many chances for her to deflect or spin the situation. I needed to wait until we were alone. Dinner that night was a blur. I barely tasted the food, my focus divided between Lucy and William. She looked stunning in a red satin dress, the kind she used to wear on our dates years ago. But the sight of her, once a source of pride and joy, now only deepened my sense of betrayal. William, as if sensing my turmoil, seemed more smug than usual. His confidence was infuriating, but I kept my composure. Losing my temper in front of everyone wouldn't help. After dinner, as the group lingered over drinks, I pulled Lucy aside. She seemed surprised but followed me without protest. We ended up on the veranda, the sound of the ocean crashing softly in the distance. "What's going on, Mark?" she asked, her brow furrowing in concern. I hesitated, the weight of the situation pressing down on me. "Are you happy, Lucy?" I asked finally. She blinked, taken aback by the question. "Of course I am. Why would you ask that?" "Because I'm not," I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. "Not anymore." Her expression shifted, confusion giving way to something else, unease. "Mark, what's this about?" I took a deep breath, my gaze fixed on the horizon. "I know about William." The words hung in the air like a lead weight. Lucy's face paled, her lips parting as if to protest, but no sound came out. "I saw the texts," I continued, my tone flat. "I know what this weekend is really about." Her eyes filled with panic, and for a moment, I thought she might deny it. But instead, she looked away, her shoulders slumping in defeat. "It's not what you think," she said softly. "Then what is it?" I demanded, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've been planning this for weeks." She turned back to me, her eyes pleading. "Mark, I love you. I do. But what?" I cut her off, the words coming out sharper than I intended. "You love me, but you're ready to throw it all away for him." Tears welled up in her eyes, and she reached for my hand. I pulled away, the gesture too little, too late. "I don't know what I'm doing," she admitted, her voice breaking. "I got caught up in something I didn't know how to stop." "That's not good enough," I said, my voice cold. "You made a choice, Lucy. And now you have to live with it." I walked away, leaving her standing there, her tears falling silently in the dim light. Inside, I was already forming a plan, a way to take back control of a situation that had spiraled out of my hands. If she thought this weekend would end on her terms, she was sorely mistaken. I spent the night staring at the ceiling, my mind racing through 100 different scenarios. Lucy lay beside me, her breathing even, as if nothing had happened. I couldn't understand it. How could someone you've built a life with, someone you've trusted, look at you every day while hiding something so devastating? Her betrayal burned inside me, but alongside the anger, there was something colder, calculation. William had underestimated me. So had Lucy. I wasn't going to let this weekend end with their narrative in place. They wanted to play games, and I would play along, just not the way they expected. The next morning, Lucy avoided my gaze. She busied herself packing a small bag for the day's planned excursions, her movements tense. I didn't say a word, letting the silence stretch between us. If she wanted to pretend things were normal, I wasn't going to make it easy. Breakfast was held at a different part of the island, a secluded area near a waterfall. The setting was picturesque, with tables set up on a wooden deck overlooking the cascading water. Everyone seemed relaxed, the laughter and conversation flowing as easily as the mimosas. Everyone except Lucy and me. William arrived late, as if to make an entrance. He strolled in with his trademark confidence, his shirt unbuttoned just enough to show off his tan. When his eyes landed on Lucy, his smile widened. She looked away quickly, her discomfort palpable. I couldn't help but smirk. Good. Let her squirm. Mark, good to see you, William said, clapping me on the shoulder as he took a seat nearby. His tone was warm, friendly, as if the events of the previous night hadn't happened. William, I replied, keeping my expression neutral. Looks like another beautiful day. Indeed it is, he said, pouring himself a drink. I trust you and Lucy are enjoying yourselves. Absolutely, I lied, my voice steady. It's been enlightening. His eyes flickered, just for a moment, but he recovered quickly. Glad to hear it. The morning passed slowly. Lucy kept to herself, participating in conversations only when directly addressed. I pretended to be engaged, though my mind was elsewhere, refining my plan. By the time we returned to the main villa for lunch, I was ready to act. I waited until I saw Lucy and William talking privately by the pool, their conversation hushed but intense. Then, deliberately, I approached them. Lucy stiffened as I drew near, but William remained relaxed, as if daring me to make a scene. Mind if I join? I asked, my tone light but my eyes cold. Of course not, William said, gesturing to the lounge chair beside them. We were just discussing the itinerary for the rest of the day. Interesting, I said, sitting down. Lucy, would you excuse us for a moment? I'd like a word with William. Her eyes darted between us, and for a moment, I thought she might refuse. But then she nodded, mumbling something about needing to freshen up, and walked away. William leaned back in his chair, a smug smile on his face. Well, this is unexpected, he said. What's on your mind, Mark? I leaned forward, lowering my voice. Let's cut the bullshit. I know what you're trying to do. His smile faltered, but he didn't respond. You think you can waltz in here, throw some money around, and take what you want, I continued. But you've underestimated me. You see, William, you're not the first arrogant prick I've dealt with. And you won't be the last. His composure slipped, just slightly. Mark, I don't think you understand. Oh, I understand perfectly, I said, cutting him off. You've been playing your little game, manipulating people because you think your wealth gives you power. But here's the thing, power isn't about money. It's about control. And right now, I have it. He narrowed his eyes, leaning forward. What exactly are you trying to say? I smiled, leaning back. I'm saying that by the time this weekend is over, you'll regret ever setting foot on this island. Before he could respond, I stood and walked away, leaving him fuming in silence. It was a small victory, but a satisfying one. He thought he was untouchable, but I'd seen the crack in his armor. Now all I had to do was exploit it. That evening, as everyone gathered for dinner, the tension was palpable. Lucy avoided me completely, her interactions with William limited to polite exchanges. It was clear she was on edge, and I relished every moment of it. During dessert, I made my move. Standing up, I tapped my glass to get everyone's attention. If I may, I began, my voice carrying over the quiet chatter. I'd like to say a few words. The room fell silent, all eyes on me. Lucy looked terrified, her hands gripping the edge of the table. William's expression was guarded, but I could see the unease in his posture. This weekend has been enlightening, I continued, letting the word hang in the air. It's reminded me of the importance of honesty, of integrity. Traits that, sadly, seem to be in short supply these days. A murmur rippled through the group, but I didn't give them a chance to interrupt. I've also learned that appearances can be deceiving, I said, my gaze fixed on William. That sometimes, the people we think we know best are the ones who surprise us the most. Lucy stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. Mark, stop. I turned to her, my expression calm. Why? Are you afraid of what I might say? Her face flushed, and she looked away. William stood as well, his voice low but firm. That's enough, Mark. Is it? I asked, stepping closer to him. Because I think everyone here deserves to know the kind of man you really are. The silence was deafening. For a moment, no one moved or spoke. Then, without another word, I turned and walked out of the room, leaving behind a stunned crowd and a simmering chaos I'd ignited. The night was far from over, but I'd set the stage for the final act. All I had to do now was wait. The villa was quiet as the evening wore on. I walked along the beach, the moon casting a pale glow over the waves. The confrontation at dinner had left me hollow, my anger and determination waning as the reality of what I'd done settled in. I'd exposed Lucy and William for what they were, but instead of feeling vindicated, I felt a deep, gnawing emptiness. When I returned to the villa, the group had dispersed. Lucy was in our room, sitting on the edge of the bed, her face buried in her hands. She didn't look up as I entered. The weight of what we had lost hung heavy in the air between us. I didn't mean for it to happen, she said finally, her voice muffled. I didn't want to hurt you. But you did, I replied, my tone devoid of anger. I was too tired for fury. You made a choice, Lucy. You don't get to claim you didn't mean it. She looked up, her eyes swollen and red. I don't even know who I am anymore. I thought I wanted something more, but it's all a mess. You thought you wanted him, I said bitterly. What was it, Lucy? The money? The excitement? The thrill of something new? No, she said, her voice breaking. It wasn't about him. It was about me. I was scared, Mark. Scared of growing old, scared of losing myself. Scared that we'd just keep going through the motions until there was nothing left. Her confession struck a chord, but it didn't erase the betrayal. And now we're here, I said quietly. And what do you have to show for it? She didn't answer. The silence stretched between us, a chasm too wide to bridge. A knock at the door broke the moment. Before I could respond, the door opened, and William stepped inside. His usual confidence was gone, replaced by a tight, anxious energy. Mark, Lucy, he began, his voice unsteady. We need to talk. I stared at him, incredulous. You think there's anything left to say? This isn't about us, he said, glancing nervously at Lucy. It's about the others. What about them? Lucy asked, her voice barely above a whisper. They've been talking, William said. What you said at dinner, it spread like wildfire. People are questioning me, questioning the firm. If this gets out, it could ruin everything. I laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. Good. Maybe you deserve it. His jaw tightened. And what about you? Do you think this won't blow back on you, too? Your career, your reputation, everything could be destroyed. I don't care anymore, I said, standing. I've lost what matters most. Let the rest burn. William's face darkened. You're making a mistake, Mark. A big one. No, William, I said, stepping closer. The mistake was thinking you could buy my wife. The mistake was thinking I'd let you get away with it. His expression shifted, a flicker of something dangerous crossing his face. You've gone too far. And what are you going to do about it? I challenged, my voice rising. Throw more money at the problem? Threaten me? Go ahead. You've already taken everything else. Before he could respond, Lucy stepped between us. Stop it, both of you, she said, her voice trembling. This isn't helping. William turned to her, his voice softening. Lucy, I didn't mean for it to be like this. I care about you. Her eyes filled with tears. Stop. Just stop. The air in the room was suffocating, the weight of everything pressing down on us. I couldn't take it anymore. I turned and walked out, slamming the door behind me. I wandered the villa aimlessly, my thoughts a whirlwind of regret, anger, and despair. The image of Lucy and William together played on a loop in my mind, a cruel reminder of what I'd lost. When I returned to the room hours later, it was empty. Lucy's bag was gone, her side of the bed untouched. Panic set in as I searched the villa, calling her name, but she was nowhere to be found. A sense of dread settled over me as I made my way to the cliffs overlooking the ocean. The path was steep and treacherous, the rocks slick with dew. When I reached the edge, I saw her standing there, her figure silhouetted against the moonlit waves. Lucy! I called out, my voice cracking. What are you doing? She turned to me, her face streaked with tears. I'm sorry, Mark, she said, her voice barely audible. I can't fix this. I can't fix us. Don't do this, I said, stepping closer. We can figure it out. We can try. She shook her head. I've destroyed everything. There's nothing left to save. I reached for her, my heart pounding in my chest. Lucy, please. But before I could stop her, she stepped back, her foot slipping on the edge. I lunged forward, but it was too late. She disappeared into the darkness, her scream swallowed by the roar of the ocean. For a moment, time stood still. Then I collapsed to my knees, the reality of what had happened crashing down on me. The woman I'd loved, the woman I'd fought for, was gone. The days that followed were a blur. The authorities ruled it an accident, but I knew the truth. The guilt was unbearable, the weight of what I'd said and done crushing me. William left the island, his reputation in tatters, but it didn't matter. Nothing did. In the end, I was left with nothing but the memories of what we had been, and the haunting question of what might have been if I'd chosen differently. The island, once a paradise, had become a graveyard for the life I'd thought was unbreakable.